Hey guys, Steve Gutowski here at SHOT Show 2019 convention. We're here with Rob Pincus, world-renowned firearms instructor, and now you are also the executive vice president of the Second Amendment organization. Is that correct?
Yeah. I took over the helm of 2AO in about halfway through 2018, and here at SHOT Show 2019, it's obviously becoming a lot more of the forefront of what messaging I'm doing and the conversations I'm having with people.
Okay, and so what made you want to become more involved in the political side of the gun rights movement?
Well, the thing is,
what is it that pushed you into getting back into that?
In a lot of ways, I mean, that's kind of how I end up here, right? Is being motivated and active inside of the firearms world. I mean, this is my 23rd SHOT Show. I've been involved in the fight for our gun rights really by default, like around the assault weapons ban time, right? In the early 90s. To be fair, like going even back into the late 80s. I mean, when I was on my college campus, I was lobbying for the right for students to be able to at least store their firearms on campus. Sure. So this fight for gun rights has always been embedded in the background, maybe, of what I've been doing. And I've gotten more and more politically active, more and more comments about the political environment that we have, even internally into the community. And when the board of directors of Second Amendment organization reached out to me last year and said, hey, we'd love to have you come in and be more of a voice in our world and represent what 2AO is all about. It was humbling, it was honoring, it was intimidating all at the same time, and we spent months going back and forth over what that would mean, how it would look, and we announced in September at the Gun Rights Policy Conference that I had sort of taken over the helm and took on the not only as a board member but also as the executive vice president and really director of operations, if you will, for 2AO. Sure.
Now you're very well known for your firearms training. You've had a great career of that, and so what I really want to get at is what is it that you think is lacking in the movement that Second Amendment organization can fill? What are you guys going to do that's going to add to what's already being done by the NRA, the Second Amendment Foundation, Firearms Policy Coalition, all these guys out there? What is it that you are trying to do differently or improve?
One of the most important things, I think, is that we really need to focus on our game, sort of clean up our house and understand internally what the differences are between the fight that we needed to fight probably in the 80s, the wake-up call certainly that we got with the assault weapons ban in the 90s, and the victories that we've gained with the expansion of concealed carry all across the country, and the way that sort of the messaging needs to change. I think we need to be much less sort of externally focused on this concept of they and more fear-mongering. We really need to be a lot more engaging with they, and because the they is how we continue to win back our rights across the country. The middle ground, especially in America, changing the cultural sort of stigma and perception of gun ownership and gun responsibility by gun owners is really how we're going to stem that flow that we're seeing right now of aggressive, infringement, aggressive restriction that's happening again. And we go through these cycles, but I really believe that by changing the perception of gun owners in the American middle ground, that's how we stem that flow, because lawmakers, policymakers will understand that the majority of Americans believe in the Second Amendment, the majority of Americans interact with responsible gun owners all the time, and it's really like the news media, pro-gun control agenda, and sometimes even ourselves, the messaging we put out that exemplifies the worst in gun ownership or the most dangerous things about gun ownership. And the fact is there's huge benefits to gun ownership, and we need to celebrate those while we acknowledge the risks.
Okay, and so what specific concrete steps are you guys planning to take to address those issues? Like, how are you going to reach out to people? I saw last night on the strip you were out trying to get new people into the sport, right? Trying to take someone out to the range for the first time. Is that the sort of approach that you're going to have?
That was a collaborative effort with National Shooting Sports Foundation. Our hosts here at SHOT Show, they asked me if I'd join them on the strip and just literally set the example, right? Like walk the walk of, we need to be more inclusive, we need to be more diversified, we need to grow the community, we need to bring in new shooters. And we literally stood out on the strip and I probably talked to 30 or 40 people to find a few that would say, yeah, sure, strange guy with a camera behind you, I will go to a range with you. I threw him in a van and we went and shot and created new shooters last night. And grassroots advocacy is a huge thing. 2AO had its start as a sort of pushback against the corporate movement after Sandy Hook, 2013-14, where businesses, large, multinational corporations or chain stores and things like that were saying, no, gun-free zone. We don't want you carrying guns in our stores or in our shops or in our restaurants. Well, local business owners were pushing back against that and saying, you know what? We'll give you a 10% discount if you have a valid concealed carry permit. Like, we embrace responsibly armed Americans. 250,000 people on the email list at 2AO, rapid growth, 25,000 businesses, mostly small independent businesses all around the United States that weren't gun shops, they weren't ranges, they were bakeries, they were laundromats, they were car washes, automotive brake places. We were saying, no, we embrace responsibly armed Americans. 2AO, we're in. Put the little sticker in the window, let people know. Grassroots in the business community is where 2AO started. I think grassroots in the larger community is really where we need to focus. And again, that comes back to messaging. It comes back to ending gun negligence. It comes back to owning gun responsibility. It comes back to articulately having dialogue with people about gun rights. Not quoting the founding fathers, not stomping around saying shall not be infringed. We're infringed. We have to make a compelling case to the American middle ground, and that starts with dialogue and it starts with articulate conversation, not just cliches and memes on the internet,
Sure. And just a little bit more on this, just because I think it's certainly that's something that's extremely focused on in the gun community, right? Because there's certainly an argument out there that the gun control advocates, Democrats largely, just aren't willing to listen.
Right.
And there's no dealing with them. This is sort of an argument that you hear a lot, and we should focus on perhaps rallying people who we can work with or we can agree with. Like, do you reject that premise? Is that
absolutely? Now, I reject the premise that they are one homogenous group of closed-minded, gun-grabbing socialists, whatever you want to say. Like, I reject that paradigm as much as I reject that we are all the same, right? The 60,000 people, 70,000 people here for a SHOT Show, there's differences of opinion. We probably have, if we went down into the weeds, we probably have differences of opinion here, and certainly there's different ways that people express their respect and appreciation and love for the Second Amendment. We're a diverse group. I'll tell you that I've been doing a lot of things that are outside of the box, right? And I can be controversial inside of the gun community, but I think that's okay. Had a great conversation last night with the host of a big podcast, radio show, everything else in the gun world, where we had a difference of opinion on how we as a community need to respond, for example, to President Trump and the bump stock ban. I think a lot of people in our country are confused right now about what to do about the way the president behaves in a lot of different ways, but in the gun community, we were promised no more federal assault on our rights, right? In fact, that we had an ally in the White House, and now he's enacted without law, without legislators, without judicial overview, just saying, you know what, we're going to get rid of this by executive decree. That's a threat to freedom in a lot of ways. It's certainly a threat to our gun rights, and it's a betrayal of what we thought was an alliance we had. But a lot of people don't want to have that conversation even inside of our community. So if we can't have these conversations inside of our community, I don't think it's fair to generalize they, because that goes right back to that sort of fear-mongering and rallying of the base, which we really needed in the 90s. We needed that to win the gains we've won with concealed carry, especially across the country. But today it's time to sort of consolidate that and say, wait a minute. Yes, there was a they, it was bad. We weren't motivated in the 80s. We were hiding behind sporting use of guns. We were hiding behind hunting heritage and traditions and all that kind of stuff. The fact is, firearms are about defense of ourselves, defense of those we care about, and defense of our way of life in our country if we need to. But more importantly, we need to be articulate about our passions and our advocacy for gun rights. And what that means is engaging those they that you talked about as human beings. And I've brought some people out to the range. For example, I've had some anti-gun people, I've had some pro-gun control people that I've invited. I said, come to the class. Don't let us be a they. One guy in particular last year in September spent 2 days in the pouring cold rain in Massachusetts doing more work on developing personal defense skills, my roots as an instructor, right? Teaching classes on the range, standing right next to a bunch of gun owners. And this guy's been in the pro-gun control movement for 20 plus years. He did more work that 2 days in the rain in miserable conditions, having never shot a semi-automatic handgun before, than 99% of the people on this show floor have in terms of coming out to a class with a trainer and really working. Does that make him a better person? No. Does it make him a better gun rights activist? Obviously not. But did it give him a new perspective, and did it give the other people in the class a new perspective on what they are? Absolutely. And those are the things we need to do to engage with the other side in an articulate, dialogue way. Have classic arguments, not cliches and rhetoric.
Sure. And I guess the question then as well is, because obviously you're very passionate about engaging with people who disagree with you, perhaps on the anti-gun side, but obviously there's plenty of people that disagree with you on the pro-gun side, the Trump supporters who would say, right, that he...
the SCOTUS appointments and things like that, they're incredibly important.
There's plenty of things he's done that are legitimately pro-gun.
For sure.
Even if they're legitimate criticisms of what he's done with bump stocks and so forth. and some of the comments you made publicly. But what about those people? Like, how do you engage with them? Like, I mean, certainly you want to.
You know, like some of the worst
that?
fights you have are like with your family, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or like you beat up your brother or your cousins. Like some of those fights can get really contentious. Inside the gun community, I think that's okay. One of the important things I talked about this recently on a Google chat, live view thing on YouTube. We talked about how to unify the gun community. One of the most important things about unification is we have to be tolerant of the diversity. Because if we think everybody inside the gun community is going to hold exactly the same opinion on every topic, we've already lost. Right? That's never going to happen. That's not what unity doesn't mean that unless it's, the old like Soviet bloc style unity, right? Like you will comply. We don't do that. We have to be willing to tolerate differences of opinion, differences of expression. As long as we're all being responsible and being, as you said, passionate, I think then we can have intellectual dialogue and have a united front against the pro-gun control people who are also diverse, against the truly anti-gun people who maybe are more homogenous, but a smaller segment of the people that just want to see gun responsibility. And if we don't show it from ourselves, from our community, they will try to legislate it upon us. And the anti-gunners, the gun grabbers, will back them and recruit them to help. We need to be recruiting them to our side and show them responsibility and intellectual dialogue about our rights.
All right, well, we appreciate you taking the time here at this crazy busy floor, SHOT Show 2019. We know you got a lot of fun stuff to do, I'm sure.
Yeah, we're going to talk about guns too, not just politics.
Yeah, tons of guns here. I'm sure you got to try and handle every one of them, right?
Yeah, well, I went out at range day yesterday, so I actually got to shoot some of the ones that I've been meaning to shoot.
What was
or
your
been
favorite
excited
gun?
about.
What's the most interesting?
You know what? I like the Nemo gun. I mean, obviously the PD-10, the prototype. I love seeing other people shoot it. People experiencing what my gun is like, and then we're going to bring that to market later this year.
Right.
But I really like the Nemo gun. That Nemo handgun that they're doing, and it's in a beta version of the prototype now. I actually got to shoot it yesterday. It's cool. It's not a concealed carry gun. It may not even be a competition gun. I'm not even sure what kind of gun they think it is. I think it's a cool gun, and it was fun to shoot. It's a build. Imagine like what Nemo is to rifles, right? Super high end, well made, incredibly like machining, and just the look of it. It's just a sexy gun. Yeah. Feels great in the hand. Shoots really well. Probably not the lowest price point, but it does what it's supposed to do. And I, hitting a 3-inch plate at about 40 yards yesterday, like just doing it, right? Beautiful trigger, beautiful machining, and it may be another 2 years before that gun hits the market. But to me, especially now that I'm manufacturing on the PD-10 side with Avidity Arms, it's fun to be part of that. And I knew about that gun, maybe a year ago, coming up on a year ago was when I first heard about it. And now they brought it out in public and they let people shoot it yesterday. I think that's cool. It was nice to get my hands on the Mossberg gun, nice to get my hands on the new Glock, things like that. But I really like the prototyping and the innovation and the pushing the envelope and getting outside the box that Nemo's doing with that handgun.
Interesting, cool. Well, we appreciate your time.
Awesome.
Thank you for speaking with us.
Thanks, man.
And off to your next
and
we're off to our next interview. So.